Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. Today we're going to give you an unboxing of the brand new, I'm not even sure this has started shipping to pre-order customers yet, Thunder on the Mississippi, Grant's Vicksburg campaign, April to July 1863 from Multiman Publishing. This is volume number 14 of the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War series, one of my favorite series. I picked this up at WBC. Multiman did have a few things available that were pre-order things. There will be unboxings or unbaggings of the other two along presently. But the big one for me was Thunder on the Mississippi, which I've been looking forward to for a long time since I found out that they would be working on it. Anybody who picked it up at WBC and who happens to have pre-ordered it through Multiman may want to consider canceling their pre-order because otherwise they're going to get a second copy. But here we are. Now this is in the pretty standard 1.5-inch Multiman box. We'll see what's in it. I have actually flipped through somebody else's copy already, so I have an idea of what's in here. And I'm pleased to report that I was pleased with the contents. So let's open her up and give it a look. Now, as usual for Multiman, this is going to be kind of mixed up in the order in which they collate this stuff. So, Thunder on the Mississippi should contain a box and a lid, one GCACW series rulebook, 24 pages, one Thunder on the Mississippi rulebook at 60 pages, two normal-ish sized wargame maps at 22 by 32, 2.5 counter sheets, 5 player aid cards, and 2 dice. Here are the 2 dice, which I feel like, maybe because I play so much stuff for Multiman, I feel like their dice have in fact become my de facto standard. So let's sort the stuff out, and then we'll take a look at the individual components in a moment. All right, so as previously mentioned, there are 2 maps, and they are the maps, the stunning Charlie Kibler style maps that we have grown to love from GCACW. And even though this is the less photogenic of the 2 maps, this is the one that I put down because Vicksburg itself is on this map. This West map also contains a turn track, random events table, and a couple of miscellaneous tracks. There is a siege in this campaign. However, there's also some maneuver warfare fairly characteristic of the Civil War. So I'm very curious to see how the series implements that siege. So we have version 1.6 of the standard basic game rules for GCACW, and the cover's visibly different. Nice cover art. Seems like it might be a little low resolution. We've got a update from Joe Balkowski. This was written in 2013, though, so it's pretty old. There should be basically nothing really new here in the standard rules other than to maybe make some clarifications and that kind of stuff. And it is 24 pages. It's on a satin finish paper. Feels like the paper might be a little thicker than previous volumes in the series, but I'm not getting the micrometer out to tell the difference. This is going to be the guts of Thunder on the Mississippi. This is the campaign book or game-specific rules, if you like. And this is 60 pages, as I recall. Indeed it is. And we're going to immediately see. So, if you don't know, there's basically 2 types of scenarios in GCACW. There are basic game scenarios and advanced game scenarios, and there are campaigns, which are typically advanced game scenarios. So this first section, which is the first 4 pages or so, which includes the table of contents, are the game-specific rules to play the basic scenarios, and that amounts to a grand total of 3 pages of game-specific rules. There will be more in the scenarios, however. So let's take a look at the scenarios, and there's a lot of them. If we look at the table of contents, we're going to see that there's 11 basic game scenarios and 1 Vicksburg campaign advanced game scenario. I have always found that I recognize and appreciate the instinct of many wargamers to say, let's just play the campaign. However, I think you're making a mistake by doing that for GCACW specifically. I think the individual scenarios are often eminently replayable and very insightful. They are great play experiences. So here we have the Battle of Port Gibson, May 1st, 1863. It's a 1-map scenario, and as you can see, it is relatively small. Like all GCACW games that I can think of off the top of my head, there's a great on-ramp built into the box to get used to GCACW. This seems to be pretty clearly the expectation for this particular scenario. Invasion and Breakout, this is 5 turns, late April through early May, and also is 1 map. And it is not a hugely larger scenario. It's almost twice as big, I would say. But it's still not too big, right? Each of these lines in the setup basically represents a counter, but not necessarily a unit, because the leaders will be on there as well. Scenario 3, Unite Your Troops, uses only the west map. It is 4 turns in early May of 1863. Once again, this is a little bit bigger of a scenario. The scenarios tend to be organized smallest to largest, but don't read too much into that statement. Scenario 4, Yankee Blitzkrieg, uses both maps, is 5 turns, so this looks like a nice meaty scenario. 5 turns might not sound like a lot. It can be a lot in GCACW. But the campaign, I will point out, can go as long as 70 turns. Here's Scenario 5, Loring's Memorandum, both maps 4 turns. Pretty good sized scenario here. Grant moves west, Scenario 6 on both maps. Only 3 turns, though. We're going to get the Battle of Champion. Oh, here it is. The Battle of Champion Hill here as well. That is part of the maneuver that happens around the approach to and siege of Vicksburg. And this is May 16th, 1863. And it is one map. This is the west map. It uses the east map. And this is going to be, again, 1 turn, but it looks like a meaty 1-turn scenario. I move it once, only the east map, 2 turns, mid-May of 1863. This is success, 3 turns using both maps. Once again, mid-May. Most of this stuff is going to circulate around midway, except this one, Army of Relief, June 9th to 11th, both maps here. I wonder what this exactly is trying to capture, but you can see it's a pretty meaty scenario. Inflict all the punishment you can. Scenario 11, another meaty scenario, 3 turns, both maps. And then we get into the advanced game rules. Now, this is where GCACW can tend to become fairly complicated, depending on which volume of the game the series, I should say, you're looking at. Something like Hood Strikes North is not particularly complicated, even in the advanced game, but something like On to Richmond is quite complicated in the advanced game. But the complexity in the basic game scenarios is all approximately even, a little push and shove here and there. So we're going to get here into the advanced game rules, which you're going to see is going to take up a good chunk of the book. And we're not going to go through them in detail. But the chances of you seeing content about this game from me is not too bad. And if you don't want to wait for me, go check out Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials. Patrick over there does a great deal of GCACW content, and he does a fabulous job. So check him out. Here's Scenario 12. Scenario 12 is the campaign, for clarity. The Vicksburg campaign. 70 turns, April 30th to July 8th. You will find playing these big campaigns of GCACW that sometimes, at least, the turns do go relatively quickly. When we were playing Road on to Richmond at Winterfest, we would, earlier in the week, we would get 20 turns a day in. At least one of those days we did. It slowed down a little as things got hairier, but it still moves relatively quickly. Nevertheless, any single turn of GCACW feels substantial when you have the shorter scenarios. So we can see the setups are very large here. Another section here that we're getting from Chris Withers in this case is the game is history. I love this. So what this does is it actually tells you what happened historically in the context of the game, like giving you the locations where Drumgold's Bluff, for example, is in hex W1711. It'll show you on the map where all this stuff happened. It is fabulous, and I would love other game series to take up this particular feature. Here's a map gazetteer by Mr. Joe Belkowski, the series originator. Of course, that came out back in the day from Avalon Hill and Stonewall Jackson's Way. We do have several play aids. We have Confederate and Union force displays. Fog of War in this game basically runs off these force displays. We have a terrain effects chart, which is double-sided, and we have 2 version 1.6 charts and tables cards, and these are folded 8.5 by 11 cards. And all the play aids are on a medium-heavy, I would say, satin finish card stock, so those look good as well. Now, there are, as promised, 2.5 counter sheets. Here's counter sheet 3, which is all markers. We're going to get fortifications and stuff like that. The series, the way fortifications and stuff work in GCACW kind of evolves the farther the series gets into the war. This is 1863. We'll have to see how that works out. Looks like they have made some minor modifications to some of the layouts on these. It says supply points on these, for example. Then we get 2 counter sheets. One of which, generally, again, this is pretty typical for GCACW, one of those sheets will be the general markers, including the manpower markers and the fatigue markers and a few other odds and ends. The second sheet will be, first sheet, I suppose, will be the actual units plus usually some markers, depending on, again, exactly which game we're talking about. So here we have our Confederates in butternut, we'll call it, and our Union in light blue. You'll see that there's noticeably fewer Union units than Confederate units. Usually, however, the Union units will tend to be larger units, which is also fairly typical. Now, these are on the pretty standard for MMP nowadays, reasonably heavy white core stock. It goes without saying, this is, as I said in the beginning, this is one of my favorite series, so I knew that if I was going to WBC, I was going to grab this as long as MMP still had it by the time I got there, and they did. Which I am very happy with. So this will go on the shelf for now, but it won't be too long before this game from one of my favorite series hits the table.
Massive thanks to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, whose support and encouragement make what we do at Ardwulf's Lair possible. Thank you, patrons. Links to help support the channel are in the video description, so check out the Patreon, the Ko-Fi, and the merch store where you can get snazzy Ardwulf's Lair t-shirts, drinking vessels, and other cool swag. There is also an affiliate link for Noble Knight Games in the video description. If you buy stuff through that affiliate link, it helps to support the channel with Noble Knight store credit. Thank you, Noble Knight. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.